So the first thing I say to leaders is, if you're talking about a topic or presenting about a topic, before you even start, you go, this is fabulous. This is the best thing I'm going to talk about today. I love this, whatever it might be. And what will happen there is that because your emotion will come through in your hand movements and your eye contact and your voice intonation, your what they call back channel responses, which is like how you respond to the other person. So there's a huge amount of leakage there. So what we're looking at there is what they call the emotional contagion effect, and that's where the person who is listening, they kind of absorb that excitement.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. I'm Tanya Corless, and today we're back to Dublin. And to know what, it's your story. And today we're going to talk again about nonverbal communication, body language. I welcome my guest, professor from DCU, Dr. John White. Hi, John.
Hello, Tanya. Thank you for the invite. Yes.
Thank you. Coming again.
Yes.
So we didn't cover up all our topics and questions that we had at that time. So I think we have a time.
That'd be
now
great. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
And I hope people who are watching us and listen to us, they can find something interesting for them.
Yes. Yeah.
I know last time we talked about the books that you wrote. Can you say a few words about yourself?
Sure.
Just quick remind.
Yes, what I do in that.
Yes, what you're doing.
Okay. So, I work in DCU, but and then I also have a great interest in nonverbal communication. So my first book was about in 2011, and that was looking at nonverbal communication in classrooms for teachers. And then in 2021, then I did another book with a guy called Professor David Gibbons, who's in Washington, in Spokane in Washington. He's a world expert actually on nonverbal communication. So we wrote a dictionary. So I have a great interest in nonverbal communication and how humans communicate, basically. I mean, sometimes we look as well at how animals communicate as well and how creatures communicate, and we can learn from how they communicate too. So that's kind of what I'm doing. And I would do talks and stuff as well about nonverbal communication.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
So if you try to give definition for nonverbal communication quickly, what this would be? What is nonverbal communication?
A definition for nonverbal communication. Wow. That's an intelligent question, Tanya. Well, very simply, what I'd say is nonverbal communication is all communication that you don't necessarily need words for. So in our world, for example, like I'm communicating with the clothes I'm wearing, I'm communicating through my voice intonation. There's communication in this room, the colors in the room, the lighting in the room, the smells in the room, the temperature of the room. So mainly our world is very much driven by nonverbal communication. Yeah. So as humans walk around, we're picking up the colors, we're picking up the smiles, we're picking up the eye contact, we're picking up the smells. So it's a huge world in terms of nonverbal communication. So if you think about the reason I got very interested in it was, like, if you look, say for example, now I have my notes here for today, right? And they're all words, okay? But if you go back, say 50,000 years ago, humans on the planet weren't reading words. And go back another 50 they weren't, and another 50 they weren't. So we've been living on the earth for a long, long time without books and without text and all the rest. So that's why in terms of evolution, that's why I've been very interested in like how we still relate to the world in a non-verbal way. Sorry, that's a really long definition.
Okay. Anyway, that's perfect. So at least people will understand what is that and what they're going to talk about.
Yes.
Something what you can maybe feel. Maybe you can feel, but you can't see, you can't touch, but it's existing, it's there when you meet somebody, when you just come in to visit somebody.
Yes, okay? Absolutely. Yeah.
But if talk about the leaders.
Someone's talk for leadership.
Yeah. So how important for the leader to use nonverbal communication?
Well, you see, like I just refer to my notes here. There's a lot of different research, right? But one of the things a fellow called Alder et al. In 2001 did research on that, and what he came up with was that adults spend about 70% of their waking time communicating, 45% listening, 30% speaking, 16% reading, and 9% writing. So in terms of leaders, how they communicate is really, really important. One of the first things I think, what I'd say about communication for leaders is that if you're at a meeting, and I can talk more about giving messages and persuasion as well, which is verbal and non-verbal, but if you're at a meeting and that, it's called leakage basically. So we leak how we feel about it, and in relation to that, it's what I would call the emotional contagion effect. So, for example, I love talking about nonverbal communication now. So my hands are moving, my voice intonation is going, my body language is open. So I'm very enthusiastic about it. So the first thing I say to leaders is, if you're talking about a topic or presenting about a topic, before you even start, you go, this is fabulous. This is the best thing I'm going to talk about today. I love this, whatever it might be. And what will happen there is that because your emotion will come through in your hand movements and your eye contact and your voice intonation, your what they call back channel responses, which is like how you respond to the other person. So there's a huge amount of leakage there. So what we're looking at there is what they call the emotional contagion effect, and that's where the person who is listening, they kind of absorb that excitement, okay, and they mightn't know it. And I always think, I remember a few years ago being at a meeting, and kind of people were stressed at the meeting, and there was kind of body movements and all. And I remember coming out, and I felt a bit shaky myself, like, and I thought, and that's probably the emotional contagion effect, where I had absorbed the kind of tension that people had. So equally, on the other hand, if people are excited and enthusiastic about an idea, then when we're engaging with people, there's a lot of different things we can do. So as a leader, you're going to be talking to various people. So the first thing is, like, for example, when I'm talking to you, for example, Tanya, is that the other person needs to know that I'm listening to them and that I'm communicating with them.
Absolutely.
So it's to do with our body orientation, that our trunk and our posture is directed towards yourself, okay? And I'm misaligned here. My legs are going this way, but I should be more kind of focusing on you, right? And even like if I was talking to you like this, okay, Tanya, right? Even just the action of moving around and talking to the person, right?
Yeah.
So you're directly oriented towards them. You're facing them directly. That's number one. Number two, as well, as you talk as well, they say that when humans are talking to each other, right, you look for signs in the person that you might be misunderstood, and it's called grounding. So people often go to think they're looking for signs to see that
Yes.
they're understood, but in fact, it's actually that you search for signs that I'm being misunderstood. So what you're looking from me as a leader is, signs that I understand what you're talking about. So classic number one would be back channel responses, which is the nodding. Okay. It would be also be my facial expressions and so on. So good eye contact and good responses. The third thing as well is that when people are communicating and they're effectively communicating, we have what they call the mirror effect. These chairs don't really suit it, but and you'll often notice when people are in deep conversation, right? So let's say a mirroring would be like this now. So
Try to repeat everything what I'm doing.
Yeah. So in other words, you'll see people and they look very, very.
And how does it work?
What happens is subconsciously. What happens is if I'm interacting with you, right, and I'm engaged at a good level, right, my body will start to mirror yours. Okay. And you see, the interesting thing is that you don't know this, but all your senses are picking that up as well. So, your eyes.
Okay.
So you'll be very aware as well that now. Equally, if for example, we're chatting away, and that if, for example, my body starts moving away, and I keep talking to you, you will have registered that. Do you follow?
Straight away, that you're a little bit pissed off of me. Okay.
Yeah. So that's the second thing, and the third thing. And I'm really, really interested in this. It's called the social facilitation effect. And they say it came from a long, long time ago, where these lads were asked to wind line on a fishing rod, right? And it was part of a job for them. So I think it could be the early 1900s, I think, maybe. I have to check the date. But so they were winding like this, right? But what they noticed was, and this was their job, to wind line on a fishing rod.
Yes, yeah.
And what they noticed was when the boss came in, they were going a lot more. They were doing
Faster.
a lot more. Yeah. So basically, the social facilitation effect is that if you're doing work on that you're seen to be actually looking at it. Do you follow? So that you actually, your presence of looking at it and going like,
I prove I'm doing my work. So
yeah, that's very good, Tanya. Do you follow? So that's another side of it for leaders.
Okay.
Then, like, leaders are often, as I said, interacting with the other person. So one of the things we know in body language is that, when people are interested in something, right, they tend to lean forward a little bit more.
Okay, big more clothes.
Yeah, and they just tend to lean a bit more, so they don't know. So let's say you're making a point, and I'm going, "Oh, that's a really interesting point, Tanya." Okay. So there are lots of things we can do with our actual body that gives us that indication. Eye contact is important as well. So in other words, like, we maintain eye contact with the person. The big thing with eye contact as well is that you don't overdo it. There was research that showed that when people are looking at the other face, that we only look at the eyes really 1/3 of the time. Some of that research says that.
Okay,
right?
good point.
So people think, oh, I'm staring at, I need to look at the eyes all the time. No, we scan the whole face and take a bigger picture when we're in terms of eye contact like that. There are other things then as well, as I said, open body language. So in other words, like that we're open and that rather than closed, which would be this kind of style. And then we'd talk about gesture, and gesture is one of the things that are very interesting. So gesture is how you use your hands. And using, so people who use their hands, there would be some research to say that people who use their hands are liked a little bit more, that people tend to like that a little bit more. And there's very different variations of the research, but that, you know, people who gesture more tend to be liked more, for want of a better word. So that's the first thing. So gesturing is good. How we use our hands. So classic one would be open palms, and that's so what we look at, what we call open palms, and that's often a sign of openness in terms of what you're talking about. So like sometimes people say, this is kind of has a verbal component as well. But, you know, like as leaders in that, you have to be seen, or you have to listen to your people and so on. And that's part of, it's an important feature of being a leader and so on. So what kind of things can we do as active listeners, right? And some of the research would say that speakers want listeners to respond appropriately to what they are saying rather than just listen. So, you know, they ask that you respond. So the first one is, they say that that your responses kind of would be in somewhat in line in what the person is, the language the person is using. Do you follow? So that you're not using complicated language. The other person's not using that. Number one. Number two is that we ask related questions. So let's say, for example, if you don't mind me saying, you were mentioning the weather in Russia there earlier, right? So to show I was listening, I would ask you a related question. Do you follow? So it might be like, do you follow? Like, is it colder in summer or colder in winter? That would be an example. Number two would be that you make statements that are based on the ideas expressed.
Okay.
So I might say like, well, okay, you talked about the weather in Russia, Tanya, and that it can be cold in winter and that. And then I might say like, okay, does that affect the heating systems that you have? Okay. So it's kind of building on the idea that you've given. Another one as well is this, to show active listening, which I think is really interesting, is that you make reference to past statements. So you might say, well, I remember you talking about this 2 weeks ago about the weather. Do you follow? And you said X, Y, and Z. So it shows that's a really good example of active listening. And another one then is that you focus on details. So that shows active listening. So for example, let's say you said, for example, oh, the weather can drop to, you said it goes to minus 25 degrees. That's a detail. Okay. And it's a fact. And also as well, you may have mentioned an emotion. So it might be like, you actually really enjoyed playing in the snow. So that shows the person's thinking, going, okay, they remembered the fact and they remembered how I felt about it. So it's actually quite, it shows deeper listening. So sometimes they say as well, that, a good thing to do in terms of active listening is to have what they call predictive, right? So you might say, so that really shows you're listening. So for example, I might say, okay, so you were talking about the cold weather. Do you think like the next time you go back there that you're going to bring extra clothes? It's predicting on what something will do. So what that shows is that the person's really listened and they're making predictions about what will happen. And number two is, active listening is good in terms of asking what they call open rather than closed questions. So rather than saying, did this upset you? Okay, let's say someone said they were upset.
That's a closed question.
That's a closed question. Yes, no. Rather than, how did you feel about this? Do you follow? So,
the person has to be open up to talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay. From all those points that you just talk about it, we need to go, which one from your point of view for the really leader person who can lead other ones, which one should be aware?
Which one's the one I like the most?
Give it 3 or 5 maximum,
Yeah. The one I like the most would be the emotional contagion effect. In other words, and I say this, and I would give talks to leaders, if it's tying your shoelaces, this is the best thing ever. I'm going to tie my shoelaces. Let's hear an addressing a group.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about tying shoelaces today. So so my point there is that you think it's wonderful that you basically go, this is a great idea. And then what happens is that it comes out through your body language. So that'll be the key one there, I think. That's my favorite one. I think as well, the social facilitation effect, where people kind of, where people present and look at someone's work. Do you know what I mean? Actually be physically present in a positive way and say, I think people often forget that, and the value of that can be quite valuable. In terms of active listening and that, I do like that. I have learned from that myself. So that, in other words, asking related questions, that's one of them. And, referring to something the person said a while ago and then making predictive. And the other side of it is the emotion. In other words, like attaching emotion to it. Like, in other words, so you felt joyous about the snow. And that's important as well, I think, yeah.
But talk about their body language again in the leaders. So which one will help them to keep and bring the authority up?
To increase their authority, is it?
Yes, in the front of other ones.
It's a hard question.
Let's talk about us. For example, you as a leader, and from your point of view, what will help you to bring your authority more high, to bring up in the front of other ones? Which one? Give just one example.
There's quite a bit of research on what they call dominance and that, which I wouldn't be keen as a term to use as a leader. Some things I can say, for example, is that, like I looked at walking, for example. I was very interested in walking, people's gait, what they call the gaits, in other words, how you walk and that. So a confident walk is important. And even just, how you move in a room and that.
How you demonstrate how.
So, I mean, they did research as well. And what they did was they got people to walk kind of very slumped, right? And then they got people to walk kind of in a strong, authoritative way. And would they be burgled? Would thieves go for them? And they, of course, as you can expect, people who were kind of seen as meek and kind of hobbling along, they were seen to be more vulnerable to being burgled or to being mugged, right? So I can't think of the research, but it was really interesting. Whereas the other people who had an authoritative, kind of a clear, strong walk. So I mean, that would be classically like. So I mean, we all walk so we walk in like positive, without being slumped and kind of dejected in your walking. So that would be the first point I'd say. So how we actually move in the room. I haven't done specific, unique research in this, but I can give you ideas from a variety of things I do know. Like one of the things we have to look at as well for leaders is eye contact. And we tend to look at people that we like more with more eye contact. Do you follow? Now that's all right saying that, but if you're a leader and you have a meeting, it's important to have eye contact around the thing, and it's important to be aware, like you may have a favourite going, oh, Frank will solve that, Frank is great, or Lucy's great over here, she'll solve that. And when you're asking the question, and when you're talking to them, you have to watch you're not focusing on Frank and Lucy, because the others will be aware of that. So it's distributed eye contact would be the next thing. I think open body language is important as a leader. Now you're asking me, how does it give you authority? Now there's also research about how, the clothing that people wear. And some interesting things, like, for example, what they call cool clothes and warm clothes. They're not cool as in like what you think you like.
It's a colour.
It's not even that, Tanya. I know what you're thinking, but it's not quite that either. It's, how would I explain this?
Style.
So the people who wear cool, it'd be kind of like formal cool, okay? They can be seen as professional and kind of expert in their field, right? So, but it's cool dressing, okay? So can I think of that? Like it could be quite a suit or quite a formal dress. Do you follow?
Yes, I
So
do.
you make cool observations of that person, what they call cool. On the other hand, is what they call warm observations. So when you tend to make cool observations, you won't be making as warm. In other words, you won't be saying, oh, that person is possibly kind, or that person's very nurturing, or that person's all those things. You'll be thinking more like that person's professional, that person's authoritative, that person's expert in their field. Do you follow? Whereas the opposite, like the warm things might be more of a casual style. So how we dress as well as a leader will affect people's perception of you in an authoritative sense.
We talk about how a person as a leader should be entering into the room, then how they should be dressed up, how they communicate to their audience, eye contact. But if talk about the dance, people love to dance, okay? If people dancing, what example you can give of the non-verbal communication, or is there none of them?
I've kind of researched dance quite a bit now, not in a formal sense, but I've researched all the literature on dance, right? So I'm really interested in dance.
Okay.
Like it's kind of universal, right? So like there's a guy called Stephen Myton who wrote a book in 2005, and he was saying that he reckons dance goes way back to humans almost 1.8 million years ago, which is a huge thing, right? But in terms of dance, first of all, some of the people say, some of the research was like, oh, dance is all about courtship, and dance is all about finding a mate. In the animal world, in the creature world, dance would be quite a feature of that, where creatures would kind of mirror each other or do different kinds of dances as such.
Yes.
What more recent research now in 2017, and that by Christensen and different people like that, what they're finding out now is that dance is it's kind of an auto-regulation thing. In other words, that it has a kind of a social feature as well. So that dancing is kind of like, it assists kind of sense of social kind of cohesion or social bonding and so on. Do you follow? So not necessarily always courtship. That's the first thing. Then we have dance and story as well. So throughout time, dance has been associated with story. For example, the Native Americans had what they called the buffalo dance, which was a kind of a story. So sometimes we can use dance to tell a story.
Yeah.
But the big thing about dance is this. Dancing has been shown to provide rewards-related neurotransmitters, which can include endorphins and opioids, in fact, okay? And it has also been found to enhance immunoreactivity, okay? So in other words, and muscle tone and cardiovascular health, which makes sense, in other words, because it's a form of exercise. Some research in 92 found that it improved socio-emotional coping skills. So what we're really saying there is that it helps people's coping skills because they're dancing together. It helped kind of, that social relations kind of thing and coping in that context. It definitely has benefits for the human. And in some cases, it's been found to increase self-confidence.
Absolutely.
And even boosting self-esteem as well. We know that children as young as 5 years old can recognize emotions like happiness, anger, and so on from dance. And there's been research done on that in 1998 where they found that children could tell, oh, that's a happy dance or that's not a happy dance. So it's quite interesting.
But would you say this, if the leader or any person, doesn't matter, leader or not, person like you and me, we have some skills or talent, whatever we just gained or it's just because we had it, okay? So, and we can enter the room and we can dance. Would this kind of skills give us a little bit of power?
Oh, so you're asking me like if someone was...
Yes, yeah.
If someone came into...
about leader at the moment. Leader, yes. But if normal person who would have those skills?
Good dancing skills.
Good dancing skills or something else. So enter the room and demonstrate, like play even on a piano that's hiding in the bushes.
Okay.
So would these skills give any power?
I don't honestly know. I would suspect, I'm not sure if it would affect ideas of power, but it might affect perceptions of kind of their kind of talents, I suppose, number one, and even their energy levels. Just on that, people can make inferences about male strength, biochemical states, based on their dance moves and their obviously grip as well. So in other words, if I was gripping, it's really interesting actually because with 2007 and 2005 they did this research, and that women prefer male dancers with more masculine traits. So in terms of answering your question, people do make inferences. Women will make inferences about a male's strength of a male, and also biochemical states. In other words, like their kind of strength, really, I suppose, and their own kind of agility in that. So that could affect perception in that case. If someone spontaneously started dancing, that makes sense. But so that's research. That was the only research I know that I could pull on.
That's grand.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this person who started dancing spontaneously or playing the piano, maybe this person, definitely this person will catch attention, okay?
Yeah.
So is this attention, give them a power to feel a little bit better above other one?
About themselves,
yes,
about other people?
About themselves as well, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the first thing is there is some research to say that it does give you confidence.
Okay.
As a person. And I'm sure others would admire the dance. It might, of course, depend on the dance. Like if people were...
I talk about the normal standard dance without all kind of unexpectable pole dancing or something okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Classic version.
Yeah, so you're talking about normal dancing.
Normal dancing, yeah.
Imagine it, people would...
But would you call this as a non-verbal communication as well or not?
Dancing, is
yes,
it?
Yes, no. When a person starts dancing, it's a part of the non-verbal communication when that person demonstrates the skills.
Absolutely.
It's a non-verbal. The same as the playing piano.
Yeah, yeah.
And how you can define this type of non-verbal communication that person demonstrate when spontaneously start dancing in the room or start playing piano? Or demonstrate any type of skills like that?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it would... The viewers or the people who are looking on would raise their esteem of them, I'm sure, if they were interested in that kind of field, if they were interested in dancing, if they were able to do it properly. I mean, if it was really bad piano playing, like they might go. But then they might admire their confidence. Yeah, they might admire their confidence, Tanya, which is another side of it as well. Like,
and we talked already about the clothes. Okay, if the leader would unprepared clothes, like It's a leader came on a stage, for example, and wearing a warm type of clothes. How the audience will look at this leader, respect and feel the
they
power
might,
or not.
Yeah, they might. Like, I mean, we know, like, for example, then there was the whole thing about power dressing and suits and the inserts into the padded shoulders and that kind of stuff. That was seen as power dressing and all the rest. But there were mixed findings on that too, like, because they weren't always seen as being powerful, you know. But in terms of, like, you know, casual wear is usually often more envisaged as kind of within a warm sense. Okay, there's some of the things that we do know. For example, is that people, you know, there's a thing called solidarity. So in other words, if I'm meeting somebody, right, and I tend to have similar clothing to them, there's an instant sense of, like, you know, that they're kind of the same as me. Do you follow? I think that's the first thing that they say. And then the second thing they say about dresses or clothing is that, you know, you should kind of dress to the perception that people will have expected of you. So, for example, so like a good while ago now, they did research where they were in the US. I can't think of the research name, but basically what they were doing was a study done where the person asked for funding, right, or donations for a charity, right, and it to do with health. So the person dressed up like me and said, like, would you like to donate to this charity and so on, right? And then the person dressed up like a nurse or a doctor with the attire of a hospital.
Yeah.
And you can guess what happened. People gave more money when they saw when the clothing matched
to the needs.
Match the place they expect. So it was hospital clothing. They kind of went, oh yeah, that. So we should dress as well the way people kind of think expect a position to be. Do you follow?
Nowadays it's very different because what I notice in the offices or sometimes at the presentation, people don't know how to, I don't know what is the reason, but they don't represent them well they should be, and they're basically the dress code.
Oh yeah, I think people
often below their level it should be.
Yeah, there's a more. I think it could be right. There could be people more casual. It'll be interesting to see what kind of modern research and current research will make of that and people's perceptions. It's probably the changing world of jobs as well and so on. Like people working maybe more from home.
Do you accept this?
I do. Yeah, I think people should work on what they're comfortable in.
What about the nonverbal communication? How they can deliver the message by saying nothing, but at the same time, who would know if this leader came into the room or it's just a person who just casually came randomly popping into the class just to listen to this lecture? How you would know? How you recognize? It's good or bad?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I don't know. I think there will be I think you've raised a really interesting angle on it because the changing nature of workplaces is changing. So people are on more Zooms and so on, so they don't necessarily have to be wearing suits or, you know, there is a changing thing there going on in terms of the nature of work itself and what people do. And that is changing the attire typically associated with that. Like if you think, for example, like a long time ago, I remember, you know, teachers would have worn nearly suits. Whereas now teachers dress kind of more like what I'm wearing, or, you know, they have different forms of attire. So that has changed, but we've come to accept that now. So it's perception of attire at that moment in time for humanity or for civilization at that time, I think.
Okay, but if talk about the nowadays what's going on, okay? If you notice today, Elon Musk, even President Zelensky, they're very common come in the very casual clothes in the front of the public. When most of the president or most of the public figures in our life, they came more unofficial attire. So in my opinion, why people like president or even Elon Musk, who has a position like public figure, bring themselves in very casual appearance because they try to be close to
solidarity with
people.
That could be an angle.
To show that I'm the same as you. Look at me. I'm basically dressed up as most of you, and I'm yours. I'm a human who just for human. Would you agree about that?
I don't know.
I
think it's a very clever, interesting observation because I don't have any research on this. But what you're saying is this, though, is that, for example, if Elon Musk, if he dresses casual,
it's very often.
It could tie into that solidarity thing. In other words, that, you know, I'm dressing equally the same as the vast amount of people that are watching my program or watching my thing, or, you know, and that could be a deliberate approach in terms of like solidarity with the audience. It could be. It's an interesting. I actually don't know of any research on that, but it's a very interesting idea. Equally, like, you know, if somebody's dressed in a suit and so on, and they're addressing a group, who may not typically wear suits or whatever, or maybe there could be a disconnect there. So I think it's an interesting point, Tanya. Yeah.
But would you say, for example, Elon Musk is an example, right? And if he came into the room, whereas everybody has some meeting, you need to meet as a businessman, but as a businessman, came properly entire clothes, like suits or whatever, such a level. Do you think you'll be feeling Elon Musk wearing the casual stuff, what we most of the time seen on the screen? Would he feel any discomfort? Because,
I don't know.
Or he tried to say, doesn't matter how you are dressed up, I know who I am and I can let myself to be anyhow, any what.
But what you're asking is that, is it what you're suggesting is the fact that Elon, for example, wears more casual wear than maybe some of the people he's dealing with in his company, and that is that an expression of confidence? In other words, I can wear this.
Many elements I can see there.
It could be.
Asking this question or even discussed about it with you, I'm trying to explain to audience based what we can see all around, especially new generation. I mean, look at my kids sometimes. So they don't want to dress up, even they have possibilities to find the proper clothes. They try to and picking most of the times clothes that will be more, they call comfortable.
Yeah.
The boggy, whatever, very white stuff, oversizes, and I don't understand it. It's cool to have 1 or 2 pieces, but not have a style for day to day to wear, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because it's, first of all, in my opinion, it gives you a look untidy.
Okay.
It doesn't give you a representable look. It's give you a look like you just after the bed, a tired look maybe even. In my opinion, doesn't matter who you are. If you don't follow their dress code that is supposedly everybody will accept in the room where we discussed about the business, then maybe you try to say them, I don't care. Like a teenager saying to the parents, I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't respect you, I don't accept you, or whatever way.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I look at nonverbal communication through a scientific lens, so I can conjecture, but there is a connection between like that, the clothes you wear and giving yourself confidence. Do you follow? Now,
yes.
For example, if you dress, let's say your job is a very formal job, and you dress in a formal sense, that it can increase your own self confidence. There has been some research done there, so that, whether teenagers or whether younger people, like whether it actually helps their confidence to dress more casually, that that could be a psychological thing going on there, maybe.
Good. Now, I try to bring this to the point of the pitfalls in their nonverbal communication, pitfalls of their misreading. That's sometimes what I'm trying to talk at the moment will give you misreading message to other ones.
Yes.
If you, for example, clothes-based talk, wearing something inappropriate for the particular occasion.
Yeah. So pitfalls in nonverbal communication. Yeah. Well, like as you mentioned, maybe inappropriate attire would be classic example. Or would be an example number one. I think as well, attention. And I think, like as I mentioned earlier, so in other words, how people communicate, Tanya. So, for example, sometimes pitfalls are that people appear distracted. So, like for example, they're talking away and they're going like, and looking at a phone, for example. Do you follow? So that's a classic example. So they're not giving the direct attention to the person.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that'd be, and that's non-verbal because it's like I've not seen any words, but I'm distracted. So that'd be a second. I think as well, like I love back channel, what they call back channel. In other words, like where nodding would be an example, or responding to that. Yeah. I think that would be another example of a pitfall. And I think as well, and I saw one time when I was giving a lecture, I recorded myself and I watched it and I was really surprised because even though I like the topic, my voice intonation was quite flat. Voice intonation leaks your voice leaks how you feel about things. And it's good to have voice intonation. People I think like when people are communicating and they want to give a big message, or a leader wants it, it's important to have voice intonation. And the second thing I mentioned as well before was the idea of pausing. So in other words, like when you're giving the message, you pause. Because it gives potency. Like Barack Obama was fabulous at it. If you ever know, he was superb. You see him give a talk and he pauses and he's like eye contact. And I think that's very valuable as well, Tanya.
Let's talk about the attraction. So when you use nonverbal communication, okay, what about their physical attraction or maybe personal attraction? when especially you are talking to audience, maybe it's not a big audience, okay, but you can focus on the eye contact with somebody. Would you say sometimes when you're talking and you see something what you like, it will be coming up as attraction?
Yeah.
Or which way you will be put attraction as in a nonverbal communication?
Well, we know a couple of things about attraction, like in the sense of like, definitely one of the things we tend to look at things we like more. That's good, definitely. So like your eye contact. So let's say it's a person I'm gravitating towards more. We tend to definitely look more at people that we like. That's number one. Number two is that our torso and our orientation is often directed more towards that person. Number three, like, you know, our body languages would tend to be more open.
Okay.
In the world of kind of romance and that, you can have more voice intonation. Okay. And often as well, you can have more laughter. And in fact, they say that nonverbal communication is very potent, very strong in terms of attraction. Like, for example, like when people are attracted in that, for example, females in that, you know, they can often show more of their neckline
and just
and
try
more
to
vulnerability.
move the higher,
But also more vulnerability, because if they're attracted to the other person, Tanya, do you know?
And quick, a few ones about the pitfalls. You talk about the voice intonation, right? I remember what I'm trying to ask you. So voice intonation, it's up and down, depend if you're excited and excited talking about something. But sometimes, if, in my opinion, you're really a leader, you wouldn't use voice intonation very often. You try to maybe talk very plain, not to give your own opinion about that. You try to get opinion out of audience.
Okay. Oh, I know what you're saying.
From the point to know what they're thinking, not give your own influence to them.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I see your question. In other words, like, say, for example, I want an opinion from people, right? And I might go, and let's say, for example, I ask this question.
Opinion, I just basically, you don't want to give them your own opinion.
Yeah.
You try to see what people really think about it, or let them to make a decision based on what you're talking about, not influencing them with your
It
voice
can happen
tone.
though. You see, the fascinating thing about this is that it's hard to control. Because we're quite
I know,
such
but it's
emotion, it's hard to
possible.
control. It probably is, yeah. Like, and I mean, we know, for example, throughout time, for example, some politicians and that they became very good. They realized I don't have enough voice intonation. They're not getting enough of the kind of the enthusiasm,
Engagement
and they changed it. Tanya, yeah.
So last one, give a practical tips for leaders to improve their nonverbal communication skills.
Practical tips.
Yeah, if they'd like to improve.
I think first of all, you need to think about your own nonverbal communication, you know, in your own sense. Like, for example, I wouldn't like, because I studied the field, I use my hands a lot more now. I would be conscious of using voice intonation and be conscious of how I respond to someone. So I think that's the first thing. And I think I'd be conscious of, like, you know, open and closed body language as well, Tanya, and how we use that, you know.
Okay.
So I would,
Fantastic.
That's
John,
great.
thank you very much. It was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very
Tanya.
much for coming again, and a few quick to refresh our brain, okay? It would be so quick and for fun, and you will be completely refreshed after this conversation. I think this was a little bit pressure on you, to be honest. Okay, quick one. So it's false and true questions, okay?
Okay.
So the ocean is salty. True or false?
True.
Penguins can fly. True, false?
True, I think.
False.
False, is it? Okay.
The earth is round. True or false?
True.
Seeds grown into plants.
True.
All insects have 6 legs.
True.
The sun is a giant ball of fire.
True.
Perfect. Another one, a little bit more complicated one. Verbal and non-verbal communication works together to create meaning.
True.
Non-verbal regulators allow speakers to enter, exit, or maintain the conversation.
Yeah.
Yes, no, yes, true, no. True, false.
True, yeah.
True,
People can use non-verb. And actually, you asked me earlier about leaders and that, and I hadn't mentioned that point, which is a really important point, Tanya, is that, you know, when you're at a meeting and that there's some people who are reticent, it's all about the non-verbal. In other words, like, some people will be very quick to talk, but it's all about the non-verbal. So I haven't heard anything from you. So you can do a lot of that kind of stuff in meetings, and it can be very effective actually for leaders. Good point there.
A single eye movement communicates at multiple levels. A single eye movement communicates at multiple
Probably
levels.
does, I'd say.
True,
Yes.
false.
Yeah, probably say yes.
True. Well done. Another one, a few more left. Okay,
Need to think about that one, yeah.
Only one capital exists in South Africa. True or false?
False. There's only one capital in South Africa, is there?
Yeah.
Okay.
False, well done. Yeah.
Yeah.
How many do you know? I don't know this
I
actually.
don't know.
It's actually, I did check today. It's three. They
Three,
have
is
three
it?
branch of government, and
Okay.
each of them would have three different capital in each.
Okay.
So it's a well-known Cape Town, Pretoria, and
Okay.
Bloemfontein.
Okay.
Just I don't know that either. So the world's largest island is Greenland. True.
True.
Or false? Well done. The liver is the largest internal organ in the human body. True or false?
True. Yes.
The human eyes can observe 10 million different colors. True
Yes.
or false?
Yes.
And the last one. The first meal eaten in space was a pizza. True or false?
True.
False.
False.
Anyway, John,
you,
thank you very
Tanya.
much. I so appreciate such a comment.
Lovely. Thank you very much
I'm
indeed.
Tanya
Thank you,
Corless.
Tanya.
Stay with me and you will get more useful content. Thank you. Bye.